Hi there. Welcome to the next installment of Giant Step 30th IG Live. And this week I have two very special guests. Two of the people who were responsible for the look, the feel, and the people who came to the Giant Step Club. I know the music was brought to you by the DJs, but without the right people being in there, and the right vibe and atmosphere, it could never have been the same. And the two people who were responsible for that, I'm going to be interviewing them today. And the great thing about Mac and Jonesy is, they've done so much more and have so much to talk about than just the few years they spent with us. So I'm really excited to be talking to them, and also paying tribute to two people who really deserve kudos, and anyone who has had some sort of nightlife experience has had to have some interaction with them as well. Not an easy job. They used to tell me always to leave the door because I was never as cool as them in dealing with people. But I'm just waiting for Mac's going to be first on. We're going to do it in two parts. We're going to split the hour up into two parts, and Mac has joined, so I'm gonna bring him in. Here we go. So Mac is coming. Here we go.
What's up, Maurice? Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, I was, guys, I just celebrated my birthday. I was 22, and yeah, I had a great day. How are you doing?
I'm okay, in this strange new world. I'm doing all right.
Right. So for those of you who don't know, I mean, I think we need to give a quite a long explanation of who you are, Mac. Just for reference, Mac was ran sort of like the door at Giant Step from the pretty much the very beginning until the mid '90s, I'd say, right?
Yeah, around 93, 94.
Right. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? Because you have a very, very interesting background, and you've done so many things up until, we started working together, and then we can get into sort of what you've done since then as well. So you were born in New York, right?
I was born and raised in Manhattan in Washington Heights, and I live there now, oddly enough.
And so when you were growing up, without giving away your age, I know you're a couple of years older than me, but what sort of was that sort of the 70s, 60s? What was
the 70s. I remember when the black spades transformed into the Zulu Nation, so
wow,
that should give you a pretty good idea of how old I am.
And so you were going to school in the city, you were hanging out.
I went to Brown University in Rhode Island, and I came back in the mid 70s.
Yeah, sorry. When I say school, I meant the English school. Not university. So you were at high school, and
yeah.
And were you? I mean, were you going out at all when you were getting a little older, as a teenager? What were kids doing back then in New York besides hanging out in Central Park and smoking weed?
The Fillmore East.
Oh, the
Fillmore East was the place to be, and I went there pretty much every other weekend, if not every weekend.
I'm so jealous.
Some great bands there, yeah. John Mayall, Turning Point, Band of Gypsies Live. I saw some good shows there.
Wow. And then that became the Saint, right? Same, yeah.
Mm-hmm, same building.
Yeah. So then after high school, you went up to Brown. Mm-hmm. You were in Rhode Island. And what did you study?
Semiotics.
And so then when you finished that, what was your journey after school? Then you came back to the city?
I came back to the city. I was writing, and I worked at Gotham Bookshop quite a while. I was ran the poetry department there, the small press magazine department there. And then I worked for New York State Small Press Association. And at the same time was forming the bands. I had a band called the Autonomes with Dana Volchek, who went on to play the Lounge Lizards and Calm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And that's sort of how I got into clubs.
What were you doing in the band? What was your...
I was a singer and a non-keyboard player.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And what were some of the venues you guys were playing back then?
Well, actually, that's how I got into the club scene in New York, because we played like the Mud Club and Tier 3. We played with Jean-Michel Pasquet's band, Gray. And one time at Tier 3, there was a fight at the door, and I knew the door people, so I helped them out. And they said, hey, do you want to work here a couple nights? And that's why I got started working in clubs in the city.
And just, I mean, you mentioned a very important person in his sort of like New York downtown culture, Basquiat.
Yeah.
So what was he like? I mean, he was before my time, so what was he like?
Yeah, he was quiet. He was a quiet, shy, very shy kid. Very confident in his art, but shy in his personality. He was a nice guy. I miss him.
Right.
Every day.
And did you ever see him DJ? Because he did DJ a few times.
Yeah. So I saw him and Ramble Z DJ. At Tier 3, and yeah.
So so you were doing that down to, and that was sort of the 80s, right?
Right.
And so when Giant Step started, which was like September 1990, I distinctly remember seeing you at the very first one. The reason why I remember seeing you is because there was no one there. I remember every single person who was at the very first night, and you came as a punter. You'd obviously
Yeah. I'd gone to the James Brown's Funky People with Leon Thomas at SOBs. And Jonathan.
Which we did in June. We did that in June, yeah.
And Jonathan said that you were going to start a jazz hip hop club. And it sounded very intriguing to me. It's a kind of blend of music which seemed to me was almost natural. I grew up listening to jazz from my father, and then I listened to hip hop on my own. I spent some time in London, and I remember the WAG Club when Paul Murphy played in the jazz room. So I knew that jazz could and should work in clubs. So the idea of what you guys was doing was very intriguing to me, so I came by.
Right. So you by you being in London and going to the WAG and hearing DJs like Paul play and Chris Sullivan, you knew what we were trying to do, because we were only trying at that point. So you
I got the vibe. But yeah,
you got it.
Got the vibe.
You definitely got it. And why were you going over to London? What was taking you to London?
Just for fun. I have some family over there. My family's from the West Indies originally. So I used to go over on holiday, and I love the club scene there. I love the clubs, the fashion. So I just go over on my vacations.
Right. So then, we started the club. You were there at the very first night, and then we kind of asked you to help us, basically, because I mean,
yeah. Well, I was working clubs. I was working at Sticky Mike's. I was working at several clubs at the time, and so I said to you guys, hey, if you give me some flyers, I'll give them out. I'm out working 3 nights a week. I'm going out 2 or 3 other nights a week. I'd love to spread the word, because I think this is something that could really click. And from doing that, actually, that's where I met Richard Worth.
Yeah.
I saw him at a club. I didn't know he was a musician. I didn't know anything about him. But he was dancing. He was doing the good foot, and he had a denim vest on with a painting of Sly Stone on the back.
Right.
And I said, this man has to come to Giant Step.
Right.
And that's what happened there.
Yeah, and the rest is history, because, I mean, Richard also knew what we were trying to do, because he was from England as well, and he was familiar with Dingwalls. And for played the flute and was the first musician to jam with the DJ, who at the time was DJ Smash. And then from there, the Giant Step Septet, the Groove Collective, and kind of the rest is history. But Richard really was the catalyst that made that happen. And you were responsible for bringing him down. So,
another funny thing is, when we were at Metropolis, you had the Giant Step posse downstairs, like Richard, Nappy, I think Genji was playing too, Jonathan. Mm-hmm. And upstairs in the Metropolis Cafe, they had a little dinner lounge group, which was a little bit out for lounge. They were doing some really great stuff. And it was Josh Roseman, Bill Ware, and Jay Rodriguez.
Bill Ware and Jay, and Fabio.
One night they were leaving, and I said, no, you guys can't leave. You got to go downstairs and check out what's happening. And they were like, we just got up. We want to go. I said, no, you guys got to go down. You got to go down. Coming back and slap me in the face if I'm wrong.
Well, we tell a different story. So I like the fact that so the story we tell is that we were doing the basement of Metropolis, and upstairs was the very fancy Metropolis Cafe restaurant. And after about 11 o'clock, the restaurant was empty, and everyone was going downstairs to the Giant Step Club. So we were pissing the management off in many ways, but one of the ways was that all the business was going downstairs. So they thought, well, if we put some live music upstairs, and it will be free, because we were, of course, charging, that would then create more people hanging out, and then they would sort of be happy about that. And the guys were playing upstairs, and they would just see all these people going downstairs, mainly women, mainly very attractive women. So at the end of their set, he was like, at the end of the set, they were like, what the hell is going downstairs? And, so they got to hang out. So
yeah. And speaking of attractive women, the first night we were at Metropolis is where I met my wife, Kathy.
I remember.
Yeah.
I remember very, very well. Yeah, I remember very, very well. That's amazing. So, and that's been 30, well,
it's been several years, yeah.
Right, amazing. I remember your wedding in Riverside Park.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, any sort of memories of Giant Step you want to share? Any special memories?
Oh, wow. They're just so many. So seeing so many spontaneous things. Stetsasonic when they came on and played live. So many MCs coming through. So many musicians coming through, just jamming. The Jazzmatazz party when they had to close down the street.
Yeah.
There were just so many people. I mean, it's a lot of magic. A whole lot of magic.
Who were some of the biggest names you didn't let into the club for whatever reason? Were there any sort of like?
I'm trying to remember. I tried one way or another to let everybody. I'm sure somebody didn't get in, and I'm sure they were pissed. But
right.
Yeah.
But I mean, overall, all things considered, I think you guys ran such a smooth door, and I was very proud of the fact that I think we only ever had 2 fights the whole time we were running the club.
Yeah.
One incident was the famous door incident when we had to keep out some certain people, which we'll leave it at that. And then the second time was when we were doing Sweet Jane for New Music Seminar, after we did Arrested Development and The Last Poets and Repercussions, and there was no air conditioning, and people had been in this room for like literally 10 hours sweating. And I think at the end of it, a couple of people got into it, but that was really it.
Yeah, I'm just remembering Sweet Jane. Yeah.
Yeah.
We were at a lot of different places. Yeah.
Yeah.
From places like that to the supper club. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I wouldn't know where I was going on a Thursday night. So after Giant Step, you went on and you created your own path. You created your own club, your own culture in New York. Do you want to talk a little bit about Concrete Jungle and that story?
Yeah. I was working with you guys, still doing Giant Step, and I was also hearing music from England. I loved a band called Smith and Mighty, and they were more of a dub-oriented group. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it seemed to me, they put out a single, EP, called Stepper's Delight. And the first time I put it on, I thought the speed was wrong, because the drums were just ridiculously fast. And I was like, what is this? Now, at the same time, oddly enough, my wife, before we met, had been going out with a guy called Gerald.
Oh.
They were still friends. They were still
not a guy called Gerald, but actually a guy called Gerald.
Guy called Gerald. Voodoo Ray, yeah.
Yeah.
And so they were still friends and staying in touch. And he would send her tapes over of like raves that he played at, things that were going on in England. And so that sort of clued us, Kathy and I, both into the jungle drum and bass scene. And from there, we found out that there was a sort of a hardcore break scene in New York at raves, but there were no clubs. We're older people who go and listen to the music and have a drink. And so that inspired us, and we started Concrete Jungle. And it became very popular. We ran it for 25 years. And
amazing.
I think it's the longest running regular club of any sort of dance music.
Wow. And who were some of the guests that you had at Concrete Jungle? Because I know you had a lot of amazing
pretty
people
much
there.
everybody. I mean, Ronnie Size, Goldie, Groove Rider, yeah, you name it. Because for a while we were the only people who even knew what the music was, and we started off very much like we did a Giant Step with 5 or 6 people in the club, and most of them being DJs who wanted to play.
Yeah. I remember those days. Yeah. And so after Concrete Jungle,
After Concrete Jungle, I took a little detour. I taught public school and GED school for a number of years. I taught grade school, 5th grade, ages 9 to 14. Very strange, very odd experience.
Right.
And then most recently, I've been working at the Blue Note. I've been a manager at the Blue Note Jazz Club.
That I know because I've tried to keep on your good side for a long time now because of that. And Matt
well, that's
is
the only reason. Okay.
I'm joking, of course. But if anybody, hopefully, we'll get back to the normal,
the real world,
real world again. But if anyone's ever been to the Blue Note, and maybe you haven't noticed, Mac, before the set starts, you hear the voice of God come over the loudspeaker about if you have a cell phone, please put your cell phone away. And that is your voice.
Please welcome to the Blue Note stage.
Yeah. There will be no flash photography. I mean, I've seen some, incredible shows in that venue. It's still one of my favorite venues.
It's amazing, and it's some of the best experiences of my life. I mean, to me, to have Ron Carter, who's played with Miles Davis, besides everybody else in the world, most recorded bass player in history, a magnificent gentleman, to have him come up to me and say, "Hi, Mac, how are you doing?" That's priceless.
Right, that's Ron Carter is. Whenever I see him, I think we need to just wrap him up in cotton wool and just preserve him because he is a national treasure. He really is. I mean, he is such a gentleman. Not only does he dress as like a gentleman, but
he conducts himself, and he makes people around him conduct themselves. You just feel that vibe off of him. And this is a gentleman, and you need to be a gentleman around him.
Right. And that's before you even think about where he has blessed, his talents, which
you'll get dizzy if you start to think about that.
Yeah.
Bobby Hebb, Sonny.
Mm-hmm.
Sonny.
Yeah, of course.
Based on that, yeah.
So
people sort of try and pigeonhole him. But
he's playing electric bass on that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There's a video out there.
Wow.
Yeah, Google it.
Wow, that's amazing. And Jazzy was telling some very funny stories about, because he used to hang out with Miles Carter, Ron's son, and he would call the house and say, "Is Miles there?" And Ron would answer and go, "Excuse me, you're calling my house, James. First of all, Mr. Carter, how are you?" And he's quite right. He's kind of you got to that's how you address people.
Yeah, that's funny because I know a different Miles Evans.
Right. Well, Miles Evans. Yeah.
He was a friend of mine. Yeah, and he used to take me sometime to his godfather's house.
Right.
A certain gentleman who would sit in front of his house and just insult every person who went by for some reason or not.
So you got to hang out with Miles Davis then? You got to...
Not with him, around him. It wasn't
right.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a trip.
Yeah, I met Miles Evans. He used to be a part of a delivery service, and in the early 90s, and he came to my apartment, and he told me his name, and I go, "Oh," I was like, "Oh, your parents must be really big jazz fans," and he goes, "Yeah. My dad was he was into jazz. He played a bit of jazz as well.
He did a thing or two in his time.
Yeah, and I go, "What was his name?" And he goes, "Gil." And I was like, "Oh my God!" I mean, that's that's the beautiful thing about New York, where you will meet these people on a very sort of practical
Yeah.
level, and you don't realize actually who they are. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the thing that I
Yeah.
really
And the
miss.
many lives we've all lived, by choice or
Right.
not by choice, the many lives that we've all lived.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. It really, it's something that I think that's probably one of the things I feel New York is missing, where we were so egalitarian, and
Yeah.
everyone you could kind of go up to anyone and start talking to them. So, any other sort of Blue Note moments that you wanna mention?
Um, Rob Tober. I missed it this year. Rob
So,
Tober, Robert
so
Glasper.
right, when he does the
He does the
whole
month of
of
October,
October.
yeah. And it's wild. The people that come by, Bilal comes by, another old giant step head. Um, Mos Def, um, Yassine Bey, another old giant step head. They come by, they guest with him. Some new heads, Anderson .Paak. Yeah, it's a nice scene. It's not at all like Giant Step, but very much so. In format, not at all. In vibe, very much so.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I get to see a couple of those, but they get sold out so quickly. It's like and the Blue Note is so small. One of the other things that I think you're known for, Mac, is your style, your dress style. You're always very, very, very well dressed. I mean, back in the day, you'd have like the Levi's, the Doc Martens, the sort of like the shirt, Sherman shirt, Nat Sherman shirt, and you still have a certain sort of like fashion vibe about you. Um,
Yeah, well, I think style is important. Fashion can, and very often it's superficial, but style is something that you develop on your own. You gravitate to certain things, and to me, like Miles Davis said, style was crucial to his approach to music, and style is important to me. Miles is one of my icons, going back to the mod days, the Ivy League look. Yeah, I try to stay styling. I try to.
right. And also, I follow you on Instagram, um, and enjoy your coffee photographs. Yeah, so people should follow Mac on Instagram. His feed is very good. The man like Mac, right? Is that the
That's
Mac?
it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and Mackie Most. Uh, for
Do you
those who
know?
don't know,
Do you get that? Do you get the inside joke on Mackie Most?
Mickey Most.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was going to
Yeah.
explain it. So those who don't know, Mickey Most was a very famous record producer in England in the early 60s, and throughout the 60s and the early 70s. He passed away maybe like 20, 25 years ago. But he did a lot of the big pop songs in the 1960s.
Yeah. A lot of work with the Immediate label. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's an absolute legend. So someone who grew up in New York, lived in New York most of your life, what are your thoughts of New York today compared to sort of like when you were in your sort of like late teens, early 20s, hanging out with Basquiat, people like that?
Um, New York, when it was New York a year ago, was a lot more compartmentalized than it was when I was growing up, than when we started Giant Step. You sort of have people who go to their own clubs. People go to clubs that have bottle service. People are very much isolated in their own scene. And I think, well, at least for me, and I can't be completely fair because I'm an old man now, but it seems to me that people are less adventurous. There's less cross-pollination of somebody just saying, I don't know that much about emo, but no, let me give it a check out. I don't know that much about jazz, but I heard a saxophone on a record once, so let me check it out. I think that sort of creative curiosity is not as strong as it was in Europe. But again, it could be, and I could just be missing it. I hope I'm
Right.
just missing it.
I think the interesting thing about when when we were doing that stuff back then, and again, I don't like saying like, back in the day things were so great, but you did need, if you either knew or you didn't know. It was that simple. It was like, there were the people who I called it the knowledge, they had that knowledge, and then the rest of the people, you'd sort of start saying things and they'd like look at you like you were kind of like, you're talking a foreign language, because the music was so rare, and there were only certain places that you could hear it. Oh, I went to Japan and I heard that sort of. You went to London, you heard, so you had these certain people who had that knowledge, and you needed DJs who also had that knowledge because they needed to have the records to even play. You couldn't just download, you couldn't Google it or buy it or listen to it on Spotify.
Just download, Yeah, no, I think things, again, once again, I hate to be old man judgmental. Yeah, but it seemed like things were a little bit more valued. Now I think there's a different dilemma. I think when we were young, our dilemma was to find things. They weren't very readily available. You had to digging in the crates, you had to look, you had to search out what you were interested in. Now I think it's more a matter of sifting through. There's so much information available to people these days. So much music, it's right there. Click on Pandora, click on Spotify, and it's just, what do I listen to? And I think that comes back to the DJs. You have to find a crowd of people, or a DJ, online DJ, whatever it may be, somebody you have a little bit of faith in. You can say, okay, if they like this, let me check it out. And then follow from there. Oh, okay, they played a record that sampled Charlie Parker. Who the fuck is Charlie Parker? Well, let me find out. They played something that sampled Jimi Hendrix. Well, he was a guitar player in the 60s, wasn't he? Let me find that out. So I think it's a different sort of digging now. It's sort of sifting through what you're not interested in to finding what you really value.
Yeah, the gatekeepers. I mean, the gatekeepers, the curators are still important, because you're right. Now I look at things like, Spotify, which I use a lot, but it feels like you walk into a room and there's just a pile of records.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, oh my God, there's so much music. I don't know what to do, So you need someone to go, hey, you should listen to this, and you should listen to this, and listen to, and Spotify, the algorithm is pretty good now. I think once you use the platform enough, I'm now getting introduced to music that I didn't know, so I'm enjoying the algorithm, but it takes a while for it to get used to, who and what you are, so.
Yeah.
So we only have like a couple of more minutes before I go over to Jonesy. Anything else you want to share with us? Anything, anything at all?
I want to give a shout out to Mark LaBelle. I don't know where he is. Jones and I were talking about him. He was crucial back in the day. He did a lot of heavy stuff, got Giant Step gear going. So yeah, peace to Mark LaBelle. Keep your head to the sky, people. Keep your head to the sky.
And for those who don't know who Mark is, Mark now is basically, he's Eminem's manager. So it's amazing when, Mark was a kid from the Lower East Side, very involved in club culture, worked with us at Giant Step. Streetwear, and then went on and started working with an unknown rapper called Eminem. So, the rest is history there.
I have a funny story about Eminem, actually.
Okay, go ahead.
I was at home in bed, and I can't remember who it was who called me up. But they said, you got to come down to Tramps. There's this kid who's going to get on the open mic, and he's really good. And I was like, you're calling me up at midnight to come down to Tramps to see some kid get on the open mic? Are you crazy? He said, no, you got to come. And so I went. And it was Mr. Mathers. It was worth the trip downtown.
Wow, that's a great story. So, Mac, thank you so much. Thank you for everything that you've done, that you're still doing, and I really look forward to seeing you in the real world, at the Blue Note or beyond. So thank you.
Definitely.
And everyone stick around, because we're going to bring on Jonesy now, William Hines, aka Jonesy, and I should say that Mac's name is Salmon McFarlane, aka Mac. Yeah, what?
Erdman Goldstein, Salmon McFarlane.
Sorry, I'm Erdman Goldstein, and you told me that where you got your name from. I remember many years ago. So,
yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mac. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
man.
Okay.
Let's do another 30 years from now.
Oh yes. Oh, maybe before. I'll be in my 50s by then. Great. So I'm going to bring on Jonesy. Thank you, Mac.
Okay, man. Take care.
Okay. So we are going to bring on Jonesy. So I'm presuming it's Wanda who is requesting me. Okay, I'm just waiting for the connection. Oh, Wanda declined me. Okay, so Jonesy, let me find you then. Here we go. Here we go. We should be getting Jonesy now. There you go.
What's up?
How you doing, Jonesy?
Cool. What's up, Giant Step family? To everybody, I'm just going to say that straight out. So for Mac, I know you're saying, I see everybody that's popping on here. But to the whole Giant Step family, to everybody who's come through, worked there over the years, because they know I consider everybody, I can still consider them family, even if with them not being there.
Right.
Yep.
So, right. So you basically took over when Mac left, so mid-90s, and you've continued working with us up until that point. I mean, we don't do very many, parties anymore, but when we do that occasional party, you are the you are our go-to guy. But you're much more than that. So tell us a little bit about how, where you got started. Because you grew up an army brat, and you spent a lot of time in Europe, right?
Yeah, I mean, not a lot of time. I came back from Europe. We went to Europe when I was 6. So I'm not gonna mention the year. But I went when I was 6. Came back when I was 11. So we initially went to France, and we moved from France to England, and from England came back home. And I was born at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio. And from the amount of places I've moved, we could do the whole half hour. Of
just from how many schools you went to growing up.
But we ended back up my father's from New Jersey, so we ended back up in New Jersey. So
is that how you got the name Jonesy, because you were English?
No. Okay, my mother's last name is Jones. So my name is Jones. So I'm William Jones Hines, so they called me Jonesy.
Got it. So which part of New Jersey did you grow up in?
I grew up in the land of actually George Clinton, Plainfield, New Jersey. That's where George Clinton had his barbershop back in the 60s. Yeah, that's where I grew up. Stone hard, die hard, funketeer, everything. And there were so many bands, like funk bands and everything that came out of Plainfield. It was amazing. Like you would go see them play at a place called Silas Field, where they did a lot of live shows. So Parliament might play the Voltage Brothers. This is the stuff you would see in the summer, growing up. So, and basically, I consider that where I grew up, because that's where I graduated from. I graduated from Plainfield High School, P-Phone.
Right. And George Clinton tells the story that he would have his barber shop, and like some of the kids from the neighborhood would come out and hang out in his barbershop, and these were kids like Bernie Worrell, and he then sort of started nurturing them, and then at weekends he'd go up to Detroit, and he'd do his shows around there, but he had his barbershop in Plainfield.
I went to school with Kevin Goins, and that was his brother. What's his brother's name? Glenn Goins' brother, one of the baddest lead guitarists. I went to school with, let's put it this way. When he went to school, But our talent shows were basically all funk. Like the bands would come out in diapers. But you know, Kevin Going started Quasar, so you would see, you know, that, you know, funk Get Ready to Roll. So that kind of stuff we were pretty much exposed to, because they were always playing, and you never knew who would come, you know, to play. It was just. I mean, it's just an amazing time to grow up in playing for that time. So.
And how old were you when you started going into the city to go to?
I started going into the city when I was 17. My sister did her internship at WBLS. She worked in the news department. So I literally used to go over there. I'd go over there out maybe 3 or 4 times a week in the summer to just hang out with her, because I could go into, you know, it was cool because I can go up into BLS. She worked in the news department, but once you're in there, you're in there. So I could go in and just stand there and watch, you know, it was weird. But the funny thing is, the floor below WBLS was Penthouse Magazine. So I actually spent more time, because you could actually go into their lobby, and in their lobby there was Hustler, you know, all this stuff, and the receptionist, you know, I shouldn't be telling this story, but, and I probably spent more time down, and my sister didn't know I was doing that. She thought that I was coming directly up there. So then I'd be down there for about an hour looking at all the magazines, and then I go up to her and we go off to lunch. And if she's listening now, if you plugged in now, she'd probably be like, "Oh, okay." But I think I told her this at some point in time.
She'd be like, "That explains a lot, right?"
Yeah. Explain why I was late.
Yeah. And when did you start going to clubs, and what were some of those clubs that you would go to?
I started going to clubs. Jersey has its own nightlife. A lot different than New York, but at that time, probably just as strict, because basically I'm 18 years old. You can't get to any clubs for the most part in New York. A lot of the clubs, Paradiso, and all these clubs that were in New Jersey. One of my favorite clubs was a club called El Castillo. The only reason I got into El Castillo is because one of the security guards who worked there was a security guard at our high school. And his name was Kareem Allah. He was a famous martial arts guy, and his son was Little Kareem, Little K.A. And he would let us in, even though we knew. And then we also knew some of the DJs. And he had another club called Dupes. And it's like some of my favorite clubs. Now, going to the city now, and here's the thing. You had to be 25 years and up back then, because they didn't want kids in. They didn't want teenager knuckleheads. You had to basically be, so I figured at 25, you're a lot more mature, because, you know, guys are knuckleheads, teenagers, you know, knuckleheads don't know how to handle themselves. So 25, but I used to get into a lot of clubs because I would go out with my sister, and say we would go into the city and go to some place like Pippin's. Now, 5 beautiful women, and my sister was really pretty. It's 5 beautiful girls coming up, and you got one little knucklehead, big afro covered up, and they're not going to not let me in.
Right.
And the 5 women away. So I would get in based on that. And they would be like, "Okay, go hang over. We don't want to make sure we don't come in here and see you drinking, you know, or whatever." And the first place I would go is to the DJ booth and just stand by the DJ. So.
And who were some of the DJs back then?
I don't know. I don't actually remember many of the DJs because they were older. Like my favorite DJ, and I should know his name, was he DJ'd at El Castillo, and I know he used to wear a brace on his leg. That's all I remember. Don't know his name. I only know the DJs from Zanzibar, because that's when Zanzibar opened for teenagers. Because at the time, Richard Long had done a club in Newark. It was called Paradiso. Paradiso was for 25 and up, so it was really hard to get in there, and had one of the most amazing sound systems. So I think somebody thought at that time, because when I turned 18, they made it legal for you to drink. So they were like, "Okay, let's do a club for like teenagers, 18-year-old up, you know, and have a separate club." And
you can sell some alcohol. Yeah.
So that's where they created Zanzibar. And Zanzibar had the Richard Long system, And the DJs in there were Hippie Torales,
Tony Humphries.
Yeah. Well, Tony Humphries is later. The original DJs is T. Scott was a resident, Hippie Torales, Mike. I don't know if Ted Patterson played there, but those are like some the Hippie doesn't get the credit he should get for the amazing stuff that he did. Everybody knows T. Scott because T. Scott's remixes. And there might be a few others, but those are my favorites. I went there, like on Wednesday nights, I went to see Hippie. Friday on the weekends, so the weekends usually was T. Scott. So.
And you started working in clubs because that's how we met, but you had been working in clubs long before we met. Yeah. So tell us some of the places you were working in before we met.
Here's the thing. I was a mobile DJ back then. So we did our mobile thing and then we went to clubs. The first club that official club that I worked at was 428 Lafayette.
I remember it.
And it was called Indochine. Mm-hmm. And they called it Indochine because
it was under.
Yeah, Indochine, Brian McNally. Mm-hmm. Actually, Brian McNally was the financer for that. And I worked for two guys, John Seidel and Fred Sutherland.
Yeah.
And from there, I met so many people at that club. It wasn't open that long. But John Seidel, he came from this rock club in Houston. I forgot what the name of it was, but he was from Manhattan. He knew so many people and so many genres of music and agents that everybody came to this club. I met Madonna there. I met Keith Haring there. John Kennedy Jr. used to come there with Daryl Hannah. I mean, the amount of people, David Lee Roth, the amount of people that came there. Mark Kamens and that's where I met Mark Kamens. I met Mark Kamens at Danceteria, but Mark Kamens became the main resident. But that's where I met Dimitri from Delight. That's where I met Dimitri and Care, because Dimitri used to DJ there, and then they used to do the go-go. I don't know if you remember the go-go parties and everything, with the famous guy who used to do the gels and everything from San Francisco. I forgot his name, with the beard. He used to do all the famous gels that they would do for the psychedelic parties back in the day. He worked with them.
Right, and then you were MK for a little bit?
Well, no, before I went to MK, I went to MK, and then I left MK to Big House and went back to MK.
Right, and we met each other at Big House.
Yeah, at Big House.
That's how we met. And I mean, if you can I tell the story of how we met, or do you want to tell it?
Oh, you can tell it.
We'll see if you. So pre-Giant Step, myself and my partner at the time, Shay, we started a party called Ada's House of Love, where we basically had a woman called Ada Love, who thought she was a fairy godmother. And we decided to do a party as a tribute to her. So we had a big throne for her, and she would sit in her throne and bless people. And in the main room in Big House, we got a DJ, one of those New Jersey reel-to-reel DJs, Ernie Kendall. And the first night we did the party, I was given a really good night by the club. I got a Tuesday night, best night, and I'd never done a club before. I lied saying that I used to do the clubs in London, but I'd never done one before. And all I was told was, be careful, every club is going to rip you off. So you were the manager, and at the end of the night, you guys were collecting it all. At the end of the night, we went to settle. And you were like, all right, so I've counted the money, and we only made like blah, which was like nothing. I was like, I don't believe you. You're ripping me off. Count it again. I think you counted it more times than they counted the Georgia election ballots, and you came up with the same number every time. And I thought you were going to end up like throwing me out, but no, you were very nice, and I realized that you were an honest person, and it kind of went from there. So,
yeah. I mean, yeah, Big House was pretty amazing. We went through some amazing some DJs that got their first jobs there. Like we had Stretch, Red Alert played there, Adam Horowitz played there. Drina, we had the different people. Anita Sarko, I don't know if you remember Anita.
Of course, yeah.
Drina De Niro, but the main DJs were Dimitri, and then Mark came over there, and he was the resident there. And in fact, when Mark left, Jazzy came, as you know, Jazzy came in to replace Mark, and he took Mark's position. But I mean, the people that came there, and it was a funky little place. Amazing atmosphere, and just missed making it, to that point where, clubs usually have a 2-year, for the most part, a 2-year lifetime.
Yeah.
Nell's being the exception.
Yeah.
That was just an amazing run, but most clubs have 2 years.
If they're lucky.
And, and then the energy runs out, and usually they sell them or, they change it, whatever. We just missed that. We could have been open like a little bit longer, but it didn't happen. But Big House.
And also back then, it was on West Broadway and Leonard, and back then Tribeca was dead. I remember going to trying to get some change, and the only place open was Odeon. Other than Odeon and Big House, there was nothing at night in that neighborhood.
Well, they had. You remember El Teddy's?
Of course. Yeah.
It's the restaurant with the.
Of course, I know El Teddy's. We did the New Reconsole photo shoots in El Teddy's.
And I was like, I tried to explain to him. I said, it had the Statue of Liberty head on it. How could you not remember it? And then I guess you can judge people by that. But it was a bad area, especially late at night, because literally, I can remember standing out there with Jazzy. Now, Jazzy lived on 105th. Most of the cabs coming through there were going back to Brooklyn.
Right.
And a lot of times I would end up driving Jazzy home because he literally could not get a cab to take him uptown. And after maybe sometimes we'd be out there an hour, and I'd finally be like, dude, I just want to go. I would take him home so I could go home. And then with all his records, and then, the whole thing, like he had 4 or 5 crates of records. He would bring all these records. But like I said, that place was amazing. Completely different from MK, because MK was, that strict door policy. We had a more open door policy, and I know you remember Kenny was our doorman. Of
course, yeah.
We had Simon, and then we had Kenny, and we had these, and then also Jorge. I forgot Jorge. Jorge was, I think, probably the main doorman, and then we also had Kenny basically did like the parties we did with Paper when we did the Paper events. So
right. Well, we don't have a lot of time, and I really want to get into sort of like some of your Giant Step stories, and then a little bit about your, because you've traveled the world as well and lived all over the world, doing music stuff too. So, you started working with us in the mid-90s, and still today when we do events, which is pretty rare. But any special moments you want to mention or favorite stories? Giant Step, one of the things about people understand about Giant Step is it was a mixture of live, DJ, hip hop. That was early. And I remember the early days when we used to have the live mic, and the DJs used to come, and they thought that if I could get on the mic at Giant Step, this is going to be, because we have. This is that, this is my record deal, yeah.
Give me my time on the mic, and then we'd have different people like Sam I Am. My favorite rapper was Jamalski, for energy wise. Yeah. He was basically our
MC
host. Our MC. But it was the thing that just so people know, I had to control the band and be able to tell the band when to cut. Because sometimes they would play through and Smash would be like, they're going into my set, and it's like, and I had a thing with them, and we were all cool, but I used to just do this. I'd be like, cut. And I remember when we first started, a lot of them wouldn't cut, and I would go and I said, look, dude, I don't have a lot of time. I said, when you see me go like this, that means stop playing. That doesn't mean play another 5 minutes. And, it's hard to tell. You remember Fabrizio, and they get into this groove, and sometimes you would get hypnotized with Richard, depending what they were playing. And everybody was so talented. If Ital went into some crazy solo, how do you stop him? But, it was a blend, and finally getting to it where everybody had this respect. Okay, when he tells us to do it, so it ran this, the party, ran smooth. But the rappers, and I'll never forget, we had a group of rappers like KG. I don't know if you remember these guys.
Of course, yeah.
That would come and do the same rap every week. And I'll never forget telling KG, so look, I mean, I'm just cool. You have your rep. But if you come down here and do that same rap, I swear I'm going to come up there and take the mic right out of your hand. Write some new lyrics. And he laughed so hard. And I'll never forget him coming back with new stuff. I said, I'm tired of hearing you. I said, you've been doing the same rap for 2 months. Do something new. And we would come back. Now, going into the shows, memorable shows for me. Jill Scott at SOBs. When they not and when the first one when they brought the sound system in and we did the thing with Hidden Beach, amazing. One of my favorite shows, and even now as I'm thinking about it now, I'm getting goosebumps. Janelle Monáe at Summer Stage.
Oh yeah, that was unbelievable.
I'm telling you right now, the first show, I'm getting chill bumps now. Her energy at that show. I can't.
Yeah, that was when she was like, we had her like, she wasn't the opening act. Jose was the opening act. She was second on the bill, and no one knew who she was.
Yeah.
And I was like, when I first met her about 6 months earlier, I said, "You're going to play Summer Stage this summer, I promise you." And I did feel like one of those bullshitters because it was the first thing I said to her, but we got her to do it, and and it introduced her to a lot of people who just did not know who she was.
Yeah, and then the two others is Jamiroquai, obviously at the Supper Club. Now I was in the country when you guys did New Rican Soul. I think I might have been in Kiev. I think I was out of the country, but also Femi. 10-year anniversary, and when he brings his son up to play, and then to know that and have his son come back as an adult and do his own show and have his own, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and actually a lot of these photographs are in the Giant Step vault if people haven't already visited them. Picture of Femi with his son, and there's all these pictures are in there.
Yeah.
Just because we don't have a lot of time, but anything on the Q-tip parties, because those were a lot of fun that we did together.
Well, the Q. Oh, you know what? See, I was going to send it to you. I actually have a clip, because you weren't allowed.
Yeah, we weren't allowed to take anything. I have
no. Yeah. You remember when I can't remember his name from Black Sheep came.
Yes, Dre.
And they did that live. Doom, doom, doom. I recorded it. I have that recording.
The video?
I recorded it.
Oh, awesome. You need to send that to me because I have nothing. I have nothing from Output.
When Buster's like, "You trying to call me?" I have the whole thing. I said, I recorded the whole thing. And I was holding it. I meant to send it to you. But I'll send it when we get off. I'll send it to you. But it was just incredible, doing that. And then just working with, being able to work with Natasha, like I don't think a lot of people, they know Natasha from, I guess, Mobile Mondays, but just the different people coming on there in the atmosphere, and then the native tongue, actually dealing with the native tongue guys coming in, like the B-Nuts and all that, and having to explain to them, like, you guys got 12 dudes, bring at least okay, if you don't want to bring your wives, bring your girlfriends.
Yeah.
It's like that kind of stuff. But a lot of people. You remember the show when everybody would come down, and Dave Chappelle would show up.
Oh yeah.
Michael.
Omar from Yeah.
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 And then the night we had when Nile Rodgers came.
And Earth, Wind and Fire came as well
Yeah.
that night.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Yeah.
That was a good night.
That kind of, and I think what Spinner was DJing that night too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think a lot of people knew that D Nice was our fill-in DJ when Q-Tip didn't come. It was D Nice, and I forgot the other DJ. But yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't the Large Professor. Yeah.
No, it was Large.
Yeah.
It was Large Professor.
Yeah.
Large Professor or D Nice would fill in and come in.
Yeah.
Only thing I didn't like about that party is when Q-Tip would go out the back door, and I wouldn't know that he's gone. and people are like, "Is Q-Tip still playing?" I was like, "Yeah." And they go in and they come right back out, and you're like, "Q-Tip's not in there." And I'm like, "What?" And I would go in. I was like, "Okay, you guys got." And I dealt more. I just told his manager, "It's like, look, it's cool if he leaves, but you got to tell me, so I'm not telling people that Q-Tip's DJing and he's not DJing, and then I'm arguing, getting into an argument with when they want their money back if they're coming to see Q-Tip." But other than that, energy of the parties and really, really nice.
So we don't have we literally only have a couple of minutes. So if there's anything you want to add, just
Well, I could give a shout out to all the DJs: Smash, Jazzy, Ron, Chill Freeze, Nicodemus. Just the energy, they all had their own different energy, and I think that created all the different atmospheres for the party. And then just the different guest DJs: Louis, Danny Crivet, Victor Duplay. Now I can't think of his name from Baltimore.
Yes, Charisma.
Charisma. Yeah. The people, the hotel, but like we've done so many different things. But
the Hudson, yeah.
And Tony Humphreys, and I'll never forget trying. I asked Timmy, Regisford about doing it, and he's like, Timmy, like, not my thing, man. I'm not, I'm not playing there. I mean, I would have loved to him, even though we had that whole crowd, but then also the exposure we gave Martinez brothers, Dennis Ferrer, when we used to do the events down in the basement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We captured all the Hudson parties in the gallery in the vault, and I forgot how good those lineups were. I was like, my God, I forgot we had all those people playing there. It was incredible on a Monday night. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, and I mean, it was wild how they came in, because the line would go down the escalator and we didn't have a problem for the most part, as long as they stayed to the side. But when they would get to the point where they were blocking the people from the hotel, that's how many people would come to this party, and they would line up. That was pretty amazing.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So we've got to jump, unfortunately. But Jonesy, thank you so much. Thank you, Mac, as well. Like I said, without you guys, the DJs made the sound, but you guys basically made the right mix for the party and did that work. So thank you so much. Please join me next week. It's actually going to be on Thursday, and I'm going to have Brian Brater, who started Raucous Records back in the day, but has done many, many, many things as well since, like unbelievable stuff. So it's going to be very interesting getting his take. Please visit our vault at giantstep.net, and don't forget our virtual film festival is still running as well, so check that out. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe. It's crazy out there, but we're going to get through this these crazy times. And I hope to see you all very, very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.